Hey everyone, Jordan here again from The Crafted Piglet, and I've got another sewing cap tutorial for y'all like I promised. This one is for those of you who have really long hair like me and just want a little bit of extra room for your hair. It's by the same pattern designer that I've been doing videos for in the past videos, so if you haven't checked those out, I've got two other ones. I'll make sure to post those at the very end of the video so you can go click on them. This pattern is a little bit more in detailed, I found, than the other ones. It takes just a little bit longer because there's a few extra things in here, like pleats and a buttonhole that you have to sew. So it takes a little bit more time, but the end result is just as wonderful as the other scrub cap tutorials that I've done for y'all. So without anything further, let's just go ahead and get started. First thing you want to do is print off your pattern and then cut out your pattern pieces. We'll be working on this piece first. Fold your fabric with selvage end to selvage end. You'll have a fold up here at the top. Then you'll take the left side of your fabric and fold it over to the right. You should have two folded edges at the top and one folded edge to the left. Line up your pattern markings on the folds, then you will trace around your pattern. Next, you'll want to pin everything in place just to keep your fabric from slipping around too much while you're cutting your pattern out. Once you've traced your pattern, you'll want to go ahead and cut it out. I usually cut to the right of the line that I drew just to make sure I don't lose any of my pattern when I'm cutting. And then you'll want to go ahead and take all those pins out. And then here is the top half of your cap. I didn't show how to cut out the band piece, but basically it needs to be 6.5 inches wide by 40 inches long. You can make your own fabric ties, but I just decided to use ribbon that I got from Hobby Lobby a while back. Next, you want to take your band piece and transfer any pattern markings that you have to the wrong side of the fabric. I usually just line up the pattern piece and mark as I go. Just takes the guesswork out of it, basically, because I mean the pattern is as wide as the fabric, so why make more work for myself when it's literally right there. Alright, now we are going to work on doing some pleats on our cap. So you'll need your trusty little ruler to do this, and you're just going to fold over the fabric and measure each pleat just to make sure that it is 1 inch wide. And then you'll take your pins and you'll pin each pleat into place. Now this pattern calls for making 5 pleats, so you'll have a total of 5 pins in your cap at this point once you've finished making the pleats. And if you've never made pleats before, they're really very simple to make. This is a great project to do. This is a great project to learn how to do pleats on because it's really simple and it's not overly fussy. Alright, let's come back to our band piece. Make sure your fabric is right sides together and the raw edges together, and you're going to sew 1/2 inch seam allowance along the edge. Once you've done that, you want to go ahead and put your buttonhole placement. It's about 1.25 inches away from the top of your band piece, or otherwise really it's right smack in the middle of those 2 lines that you made earlier when you were doing your pattern markings. I did an I shape, and that's just so you know where the top of your buttonhole starts and where the bottom of your buttonhole ends. And this is just a little bit of a closer up look. And you're going to use your buttonhole attachment for this. If you've never used a buttonhole attachment, make sure you practice on something before you practice this on your cap. I promise if you mess up, you'll be really upset. And I didn't do my placement right, so make sure you actually put your placement correct, but it'll be just fine. I'm not overly worried about it. You can't see what I'm doing here, but I am ripping the buttonhole seam open. I just put 2 pins, one at the top and one at the bottom of the buttonhole, just to make sure I don't slice through the rest of my fabric. And there's your little buttonhole. Alright, now I'm just going to encase these raw edges that are on the inside of the cap, just like I've done with all my other caps. I just think it looks a lot cleaner and a lot neater and a little bit more professional. So this is totally optional. You can use pinking shears here if you would prefer, but again, I just think it looks a little more professional. And I just sew as close to the outer edge of those seams as I possibly can. And I also stuck in a little tag just so you know the name of my little craft shop. Alright, so this is just a close-up, and I just think it looks so much tidier, right? Doesn't it? Okay, so now we need to work on the hem of our cap. So we're going to fold over at that first line and then fold over at the second, and then you're going to go ahead and pin everything in place. Once you've pinned, do not sew, just leave it as it is because we need to put our ties in later. Alright, now we're going to attach the top of our cap to our band piece, and we're going to do that with right sides together. And we're going to line up the middle seam that we just did a second ago where we encased all the seams, and we're going to line that up with the middle pleat on the top of our cap. And I pin each individual pleat in place just to make sure it doesn't get all wonky and just to make sure they all stay where I want them to. And then once I've pinned all of the pleats in place, I go back through and I pull out the pins from underneath. That way I don't have random pins stabbing me, because nobody wants to be stabbed with a pin, right? Then you just want to keep pinning until you get all the way around to your hat. And then you're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around your cap. And I start with sewing the pleats down because again, I want to make sure my pleats stay in place and I just don't really want to save them for last. So go ahead and do your pleats first, and then you can move on and do the rest of the cap. Once you're done sewing, you can take your pinking shears and pink the edges all the way around. This is going to help reduce the amount of fraying that your fabric does. And then I do an additional step just to make it, again, look a little bit tidier and a little bit more professional. I usually sew down this edge to the middle of the hat, if that makes sense. If you have a serger, I would recommend using a serger during this part, but I don't have one, so I'm just going to sew it down like I did on my other hats. And this is what your hat is going to look like once you've finished it. It just has a nice top stitch to it. Alright, now we need to worry about these fabric ties. So fold your hat in half with that seam at the back, and you're going to measure 9 to 9.5 inches from the front of your cap. And this is where you're going to secure your ribbon or your tie, whichever you decided to do. If you want your hat to cinch up a little bit more, lean more towards 8.5 inches. So I'm just putting it in that hem that we made earlier that we didn't actually sew yet. Remember, I told you not to mess with it. So if you can see, I'm kind of sandwiching it in between the first fold and the second fold, and just trying to line up the ribbon with the line of the second fold. And then you just want to make sure that you pin your ribbon in place, and then you're gonna stick it through that buttonhole that you made earlier and pull it. At this point, it's easier to go ahead and stick it in there and pull it out. It makes it easier to sandwich your tie and your hat. And you'll do the same thing for both sides. I'm not going to bore you with showing you all of this again for the second side. Okay, here comes the tricky part. You need to sew as close as you possibly can to that upper edge so that you don't sew your fabric tie or your ribbon in place. And I find it's easiest if you make your needle go as far to the left as you possibly can. And y'all, just take it really, really slow. It'll take forever, but I promise it'll save you some headaches. I'm gonna leave this pin right here. I usually pull my pins out, but this is what's attaching the beginning or the end of the ribbon inside that casing. So I'm gonna come back to that in just a little bit and secure that down. But for now, I'm gonna leave that there. That way I know where to come back and secure it. And then once you get to where the buttonhole is, I kind of just have to shove everything off to the right side, just so again I don't catch that ribbon with my needle. Now I'm going to go back and secure that ribbon, and I'm going to do that on both sides. That way the next step will be a little bit easier, and you need to double check and make sure you can actually pull your ties all the way and see. Oh, I messed up. I caught my ribbon with my needle, so now I'm going to take my trusty seam ripper and I'm going to rip the seam just where the ribbon got caught, and I'm going to double check that by pulling to make sure I got everything, and I'm just going to keep seam ripping until I get it all, and then I'm going to go back and sew over, and this time I'm going to make sure I don't catch my ribbon. And just like that, I got it all done. Whoop whoop. Alright y'all, that's all I've got for y'all today. I do have one other scrub cap pattern that I can possibly do for you guys. It's a Bouffant scrub cap pattern. If you have another scrub cap pattern in mind that you would really like for me to do a video on, make sure you leave those comments in the comment section. If you have any questions about anything, just leave those in the comments as well. And also y'all, I would really love to see if you guys have purchased these patterns, and I would really love to see your finished creation. So make sure you also post those down in the comments below. It makes me so happy to know that I am helping you guys in some way, shape, or form, no matter how far away we are. So if you guys have any other questions, let me know. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe. And also, if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Thank you all so much for watching. Bye! Oh my goodness, I talk so fast.